another episode of the Adeptus Ridiculous podcast. My name is DK Diamantes. My co-host is Mr. 2 and 4 with Night Lords, Bricky, and he's going to be telling us a lot of ridiculous stuff about Warhammer 40k today. But before he does, if you enjoyed today's podcast, head over to patreon.com/Adeptus Ridiculous and consider supporting us. You get stuff like access to our Discord, which has a lot of cool emotes and a lot of cool people, behind the scenes stuff, bloopers if they happen, some really slick HD posters. There's a Tyrannid bug female that is very well endowed. Highly recommend. And yeah, we appreciate it. Patreon.com/Adeptus Ridiculous. Bricky, what about merch and like books and stuff?
DK, is the bug well endowed because it has a dick or because large booba?
It has large boba. Big anime titties is, I believe, what they call it on the street.
Considering the Tyrannid's ability to alter biomass to fit their needs, it could have a penis, DK.
It could, and if it did, I'm sure it would be huge.
It would be enormous. They don't call it the Swarm Lord for no reason.
I don't think that's... Okay. Why don't you just tell us about what book we're reading and where we can buy some sick Adeptus Ridiculous merch?
Oh yeah, Twice the King Reign is the next one. Finish it February. Adeptus Ridiculous merch, orchidate.com. Check out the description. The deal is gone. However, the dice are still there. If you want new dice, shirts, hoodies, etc., go grab some. And don't forget about our art contest. If you do not know about our art contest, you're drawing an Imperial Knight along with the pilot. You can hear more about it on our recent Knight episode a couple weeks back. Check that one out just in case you need more details. You have until the end of February.
We got some real sick entries too. Like they're popping up all over Twitter. You guys are real talented. You guys and girls and non-binary pals are very talented.
You folk.
Yep, you folks.
You folks.
You
folks. We got all-encompassing terms.
Folks. Yep.
DK,
yes,
are you
sir.
ready for your quote?
No, because I know I'm gonna fuck it up, even though it's gonna be abundantly obvious to everyone except me.
All right. That makes it pretty easy. Okay, here we go. God is cringe.
God is cringe. Uh-oh. I already forget who this is. We talked about it. Shit.
Holy hell, how could you forget this?
Oh no, this is such a popular thing too, and I already forgot who it is! Oh no! Fuck.
All right, DK is actually, I think he's about to deflate.
Oh, my brain is...
We're doing Perturabo. We're doing Perturabo again. Once again. God is cringe. Iron within, iron without. Come on, DK. Keep up.
Oh, a part of me was going to say Perturabo, but then I looked over in chat and Shaz said it's not Perturabo. And I was like, wait, but then who is it? And then my brain just went like full blue screen of death.
Yeah, it's not Perturabo.
But you just said it's Perturabo.
I lied.
Is it Alfarius?
What the fuck? What the fuck?
Because it's a lie. Because I was like, oh, it's Perturabo. You're like, no, it's a lie. I'm like, oh, it must be like God. Alfarius in the Alpha Legion again. Did you find more out about it?
Oh my God, no, it's none of these. No, okay, no. I mean, you were gonna get it anyway. I just wanted to fuck with you, but now we're in like so off-brand territory. This is so on brand. Me totally fucking up a quote and just taking everything off the rail is the most on brand Adeptus Ridiculous thing I think I've ever done. Yeah. All right.
And then Bricky was no more.
and then my head shorted out. Okay. No, we're doing something that I was I didn't have much time to research the topic because I was in LVO. Which for those of you who don't follow me on Twitter or anything, I was at LVO, Las Vegas Open. I brought Night Lords. I was going to go 1 and 5. I went 2 and 4. Pretty good times. Felt pretty good. The army is really bad. But all of my opponents were great. I enjoyed fighting all of them. I fought another CSM guy who actually taught me quite a bit, which was very cool.
Nice.
And every time I walked up to my opponent, I was like, "Hey!" I held out my hand and said, "Give me some skin." I thought that was really topical.
They're very topical, unless they don't know anything about the Night Lords. Then they're like, "Oh wow, what a boomer! Who says that?"
They were rather shocked. But it was really it was a good time. Congratulations to Richard Siegler for winning LVO as well. The man is not human and hasn't been for years.
What does Richard Siegler play?
He for the tournament he played Admech.
Nice.
He was the only Admech top 8 player, and he is the second time he has won the largest tournament in the world. So the man is an absolute monster and is one of the best players, is arguably the best player in 40K, and he deserves the win once again.
Massive congratulations, then.
Anyway, and it's something that has nothing to do with tabletop at all. Shai recommended something different, and she recommended we do an episode. This will probably be a shorter episode overall, because it's not long, but it's Shai recommended that I research something small, and it was a book written by Graham McNeil, who is the Demon Kulava writer, who has now working for Riot Games. But he wrote a short story about an hour and a half called The Last Church. And that is what our episode is on. I listened to it. The reason I was, well, quote unquote, late to this episode is because I was finishing up the audiobook literally this morning. I read the whole thing.
Listeners, when he says late, he means he showed up to the recording studio 15 minutes ahead of when we usually record. That's late for us, you know.
But we give each other shit for whoever arrives last. So
yeah, yes, we do. Yep.
But I decided to listen to the whole thing this morning. And The Last Church, I gotta say, really, really fucking good.
Really? Okay.
Might be the best written 40K book I've ever read.
Whoa.
No, it's not my favorite. I mean, you can't beat the Night Lords trilogy. It's only an hour and a half, but it's okay. So for one, it's I'll explain what it's about in a moment, but it's narrated by Jonathan Keeble. Jonathan Keeble has done a fuckload, if I'm being honest. He's narrated like all the Primarch books I've read. He's done quite a bit. He's very, very, very good at what he does. And he's it's like it was extremely emotional. Like I near the end of the book, I found myself nearly tearing up.
Oh wow!
Kind of shockingly,
really?
Yeah. I was very surprised.
You're hyping this up. I'm gonna have to check this thing out. If it's only like an hour and a half,
I would recommend it to all of our viewers. It's an hour and a half audiobook. The Last Church. Would really recommend listening to it. It would 100% just, it's on Audible. He does a great job. Knock it out in an afternoon. So The Last Church actually takes place a little bit near the end of the Unification Wars, where the Emperor was defeating all of the techno-barbarians across the planet and ridding the world of religion.
Yep, that is a very biggy thing to do, sure.
This tells the story of the last church on Terra. The last
one that has survived Big E's wrath.
The last one who has survived Big E's wrath, and it tells the story of the priest that is there at the church. His name is Uriah Olather, or just Uriah. And he was the last human priest, I think a little bit over 80, or maybe a little under 80, around there. And he was heading over to his midnight sermon, in which a man who is the emperor walks into his church, the only person to join him with his sermon, and he talks with him. Oh no, he just talks with him.
Oh, they just have a conversation, and it's just Big E talking to the priest. Also, does it matter what religion this church is, or it just sort of it's just a religious church?
They use the term of the divine and God. Though the church is actually called the Church of the Lightning Stone. But it's kind of morphic, it's just
It doesn't really matter. It's religion. Big E's trying to get rid of religion, but the religion has a god that it worships. Yeah,
it has the divine, it has God.
Yeah. Okay.
And no, the idea is that in this hour or so, it's verbal sparring. It's Big E says religion is cringe. Other guy says you're cringe, and kind of back and forth. And
imagine telling Big E that he's cringe.
Well, so Big E comes to this church, right? And this guy Uriah has heard of the Emperor's wars across the world, and he knows. I think he knows he's the last church there, and he was waiting because he's perched on the top of a mountain, and he was waiting for his last he has a midnight sermon, literally at midnight, and he was waiting for people to join, and only one man joins, and it's the Emperor, and the Emperor is under a psychic disguise. So
he doesn't know he's talking to Big E.
Exactly. Big E looks like a smaller man. He's he looks like a man, but he looks smaller. He is not as radiant. He looks like a big man, but not Big E.
Just a normal dude though, yeah.
So, Big E is there to quote unquote talk with him, and because this is the last he will be seeing of this, and he wants a thing to remember it by, so to speak.
Oh, a memento of the last church before he obliterates religion.
Pretty much. It starts off interestingly. They start talking because originally this guy. So the Emperor calls himself, because the priest says my name is Uriah, and the Emperor gives himself the name of Revelation, which is very.
Wow.
Yeah,
that is a little on the nose, isn't it? Just a
little bit.
My subtlety detectors are going off, Batman. Yeah.
Humorously enough, the priest does acknowledge this, and it's you call yourself Revelation and you denounce the divine? Ironic.
Very ironic.
But there is a painting, a giant fresco. And it's of the Emperor of Mankind defeating a silver or a dragon with angels around him and stuff. And the Uriah believes this to be the work of the divine defeating a great dragon, when in reality it's the Emperor of Mankind defeating the void dragon.
Okay, gotcha.
So it starts off small. It's very much it starts off on very good terms. The priest is welcoming anyone who wants to come in and talk. And
sure. Why wouldn't
Uriah, he's interested in this, and he's curious about the Emperor's, revelation, his want there, and talking about, it starts off simple, discussing the fresco, the big painting, and how the priest believes that the painter was touched by the grace of God, and only in that way could they paint something so impressive. And the Emperor counters with a great man sculpted arts and statues far away, and they were a godless people. And Perturabo decided to debate the existence of God for about 15 minutes in his book, and it was, in my opinion, trash.
It's trash.
It was trash. It was so heavy-handed. And while this one is not as subtle in certain areas, it's far more respectful.
Okay, good. Yeah, being a little more respectful is good. It's not just, hey, your God is cringe and I will hear nothing of it. They actually have a debate and they actually talk about it. Okay, cool. Good for them.
I'm probably going to be skipping over parts of the debate because the most important knowledge is the backstory of the priest.
Okay.
So exactly, here's a quote from the book. This is the Emperor speaking. And it says, "No gods ever created art." And then the priest responds with, "In an earlier age, some might have considered such a sentiment blasphemy."
Yeah.
In which Emperor responds, "Blasphemy, it is a victimless crime." Despite himself, Uriah laughed and said, "Touché." So
I like
he's got
that.
some...
Blasphemy is a victimless crime. I like that quote, actually.
It's a very, the priest starts off very okay with this back and forth. He gets annoyed often, but
it's a tongue-in-cheek thing. It's not like he's super offended that somebody's trying to debate the existence of the divine with him.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Well, wait. The idea is that that the emperor believes that everything is reason. The reason the Church of the Lightning Stone is called the Church of a Lightning Stone is because a man who was both blind and deaf was encountered a lightning storm and ran down a hill in order to escape it. And then he hid in shelter, I believe this like rock, this cavern in the mountains. And when the lightning storm had subsided, there was a rock, a hematite, that was struck by lightning and bloomed in this like magnificent hue of wreathed in lightning and glow. And this rock cured the man of his blindness and deafness. Wow. And so he ran down in order to show off the strength of this rock, this stone. And the water around the stone was known to have healing properties. And because of this healing properties, that's where the foundation of this church was built around. And so they had bathing houses that you would come in and bring your sick, and they would bathe into to heal themselves of disease and affliction.
Okay, that sounds like a good origin story for religion. Sure, yep. I
once
was lost, now I'm found. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty classic. And the man, the emperor counters with, the man, deafness and blindness could be a sentiment of a mentality. And I think we should also state that both of you and I are not religious people. No. We are both very much not anti, but I would call myself an atheist. However, I like a lot of Camus stuff, Stranger, Myth of Sisyphus, that stuff. But I'm also not necessarily very anti it.
Yeah. I don't know what I am in terms of religion. I think something had to create everything. I just don't know what, because I'm just a pea-brained human that couldn't possibly understand universal creation on that scale. So I'm sure something caused us all to be here. I just don't know specifically what it was.
Would that term be agnostic?
I think that's about as close as you can get. Yeah.
Interesting. Shy put in chat that said Bricky is not religious, but he is spiritual. No, I wouldn't call that either, Shy. I'm not a spiritual person. I like to indulge myself. Like I own a deck of tarot cards. I read them sometimes out of curiosity. I don't particularly believe in them, but I find it interesting. I meditate sometimes, but I don't.
Is it vain of me to say I like tarot cards because I just think they look cool?
No, I think they look dope.
A lot of tarot cards look super sick, and so I'm like, I like tarot cards. They're like, oh, do you understand how to read them? No.
No.
But I think they look cool. I'm like, oh, all right. Well, here's a ball. Go play, kid. It's like, okay.
Well, like,
thanks, Mom.
Get the fuck out of my house, kid. I'm making crystals. But I wanted to preface that because obviously we're gonna have a bias when we discuss this.
Oh, certainly, yeah.
Though it's important to note that because of that, the reason I found Percharabo's discussion so fucking cringe is because it was so I'm right, you are wrong, atheism is correct. Whereas this one plays it far more. It plays the Emperor as, in a sense, the good guy in the beginning. It definitely has a leaning towards anti-religion, but it also plays the Emperor as a hypocrite.
Oh, okay.
And that comes later. So anyway, continuing, the Emperor counters this bathhouse idea with he saw something in his in a different church way out in the east or whatever, where the healing properties of the bathhouse were not to be swapped out too often for fear that their potency would be lost. And so the water was was filthy with strands of blood and scabs and disease.
Ew.
And just kind of, and so it's a miracle that anyone survived coming out of that water, the healing water in its own right. So,
yeah,
countering back and forth.
Ew, that's so. Just imagining what those healing healing air quotes. I'm doing them. You can't see them. That's with like scabs and disease and blood
it was really
in it.
nasty.
People being like, "Oh, let me jump in and heal myself," and it's like, oh.
So the main discussion kind of got to the idea where Uriah said, all right, you and I can verbal spar all morning, but by the time dawn breaks, you are to leave me. And the Emperor said, sure, knowing full well that it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and he's Big E, so if he does leave, he's just going to fucking obliterate the church anyway, so who gives a shit?
Yeah. So the main basis of the entire novel was the story between the two, the story of Uriah. So Uriah grew up in the mid 30th millennium, shortly before the Unification Wars began. And he was son of wealthy parents, good parents, but when some people have nothing wrong with their lives, have great parents, and they just rebel, they act out, and Uriah was one of them. His father in fact, they were sipping some wine from a tumbler when they spoke, and Uriah said that he was to open the wine on his wedding night when the bottle was not open. And he said he never married.
Never married, never progressed his lineage.
No one could put up with him, is what he said. But in the beginning, he was a rebel. He drank himself blind every night. He stole. In fact, one of the biggest parts of the book is a little pocket watch. He's a brass pocket watch he stole from a man when he was like 9 as a gift for his father. And it was said that when the pocket watch ticking is when doomsday would begin. And he had the pocket watch in the middle of the altar in the church.
I've always wanted a pocket watch. Pocket watches are dope.
They are dope. They're very old, like old money kind of thing, but they're neat.
Old classy gentleman with a monocle and a top hat, and look at my vest and my pocket watch.
It's kind of cool. Big old mustache.
Yeah, big mustache.
So as Uriah made his way around, and he would travel across the lands and visit multiple continents, and all he saw was the double-headed eagle of the Emperor, and he would constantly be reminded of the Emperor's new warriors and see his enormous warriors walking through the streets, which at the time were the Thunder Warriors.
Those are big boys.
Those were big boys. Yeah. And he was always, as a young man, he was always he hated them, because youth rebels. Yeah. And eventually, one time he in a drunken stupor, he went to his line of Thunder Warriors. The guy, you fucking piece of shit, crap serving the newest tyrant. You rip apart the tyrants of the world, you say, yet you giant lards can't think for yourself, blah, blah, blah. And the Thunder Warriors grabs him with one hand and lifts him up. And
I was going to say, that's ballsy to go up to a Thunder Lord and start talking shit. Or a Thunder Warrior and start talking shit. That takes some balls. Holy shit. Thunder Warriors are gigantic.
He was drunk out of his mind, the sense of invincibility.
Still, even drunk, it's like looking at a Thunder Warrior and thinking you can talk shit. Wow, okay.
Right. So he was pounding at the Thunder Warrior, trying to get him to release him, and he's like, "You shut your mouth before I make you shut it." He threw him away. And
like
so then
a sack of potatoes. Yep.
Pretty much. And so with time, eventually, he made his way. He returned back home to give some stuff to his family, mostly things he stole, and eventually he made his way over instead to a different group, a different town. The town was owned by a man, I don't remember his name, but he was under the guise that he had assaulted and murdered a woman. But he was a very proficient speaker, and the town didn't like the Thunder War or the militia, the guard that the Emperor had in store. So it was assumed that he was wrongfully accused, and Uriah had believed him. Okay. And so him and the town whipped up like a militia because there was a riot in the street that killed like a bunch of people, and they were furious. So they whipped up a militia, and then they murdered all the Emperor's guard. Wow. There, no, not the Thunder Warriors. The Emperor's like Imperial Guard.
Well, sure, but still, that's pretty impressive that you can whip up like just a local militia and take out a bunch of like Imperial Guard.
Well, the whole town
that's still pretty nice.
Like, the whole town had like revolted and attacked like the, heads on the Bastille, Vive la France, that kind of shit.
Vive la Révolution!
Yeah. So once then they started kind of just revolting, and they were fucking proud, chest held high, and excited that they were finally going against the tyrannical rule of the so-called emperor. Mm-hmm. And other cities would start to sprout up and make this little militia. And this man, the guy who would actually, the guy who was wrongfully accused of poisoning and assaulting, or was he poisoning? Assaulting this woman, and killing this woman, was leading that revolution. He was on his horse and he was shouting and bringing people together. And during this conversation, Revelation, the emperor, said, you do realize that, this guy was guilty for this crime, and he did assault and murder this woman.
Oh, no.
And Uriah said, yeah, I know that now, but at the time I didn't, and,
no, that doesn't make it okay, though, Uriah.
No, but he was young and didn't know. And so they whipped up like a force, like 50,000 men, a militia, and they were parading across the streets, not training, but parading their military might, like, we are rebelling. And they were prepared to fight for their own freedom against the emperor's rule. And so they found a hilltop, a great, extremely powerful position with a marsh they could that someone couldn't get through on the side, like a rocky cavern on the other side. The greatest spot. And way down there, there was an army of the emperor amassing to take back the area, and it was a tenth of their force, but it was a tenth of a malicious force. If they had 50,000, and they had 5,000 of the Thunder Warriors.
Oh. All right. Okay.
And as the ranks made their way down, it was like a dead silence as the guy on the horseback who had assaulted the lady was like, yeah, our freedom, yada yada. And as they charged down at the Thunder Warriors, in a moment, like the air just turned into the sound of thunder as they opened up with bolters on their ranks.
Oh boy. And
just
obliteration.
They were slaughtered. It was called the Battle of Gadoir, I think. Gadoir, I forget the name of it, but they were completely slaughtered as Uriah saw all the men around him blown open by bolt shells.
Oh boy.
Because these are bolters, right? These are like rapid fire grenade launchers.
Yep. Oh boy.
So these men were limbs blown off, chest cavities opened, legs and body parts. The dude who assaulted the woman was blown off of his horse and was lying in a sprawl of meat. And it started off with this just, like, the only sound you could hear was the thunder crack of bolters. And then after the volley came, it was nothing but screaming. It was just and everyone started breaking ranks and running. Like, within 10 seconds, they lost like 9,000 men.
Yep, not surprising. Even if you were like a well-outfitted, even if they had Space Marines on their side, you're not going to stand up to that many Thunder Warriors.
Well, the Space Marines would do an okay job at it, I think.
Yeah,
but it was
if you're just like on horseback with just your local militia that can maybe stand up to some Imperial Guard, yeah, you're gonna get absolutely fucking bodied.
So as he was talking about how the sound of just the bodies of screaming people, and then the smell of singed clothing and fecal matter of men soiling themselves and blood. And eventually he felt a sting in the back of his head where a piece of bone from one of his comrades had exploded and sliced the back of his head open.
Holy shit.
So he ran, and he wasn't ashamed of me. He's like, this whole point, he was like, didn't want to share this, but they're like drinking whiskey or something the whole time. So he's kind of, his hand is shaking.
Yeah.
And so he ran and hid and passed out from blood loss or whatever in like a cave. And as he woke, he saw this golden light, this incredibly bright golden light in front of him. And this light had a face, this visage that said, "Why do you deny me? Accept me, and you will know that I am the only truth and the only way."
Oh, no, that light was Biggie, wasn't it?
It was Biggie.
And that's the whole reason he became, like, religious and wanted to start, like, a church in the first place.
So Uriah returned back home, where apparently his family, who were very wealthy at the time, were raided by some raiders, some enemy faction. And he came back to find his brother dead and his mother and sister violated in front of his father.
Oh.
Hoping
okay.
for his father,
grim dark.
hoping for his father to tell them where all of his money was. And his father, a man with a weak heart, died from, assume, a heart attack during this.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So with his family dead, and these raiders were eventually wiped out by the emperor himself, which he states, Uriah says, "Oh, I don't care for death anymore. You know, I believe that they will find their penance in the hands of God, for they were horrible people. You know, he has faith that they got their comeuppance in the afterlife."
Okay.
But from there, that's when he devoted himself to the Church of the Lightning Stone and became its priest. And from then on, he was the last priest on earth. Well, not the last priest on earth, but he was the priest, and he would hold midnight sermons. And now, at the ripe age of around 80, he was the last priest on earth.
Having a little chit chat with Big E.
About, a little chit chat with Big E.
Yeah.
And here's a quote from the book. This is Big E to him, and he says, "What made you think it was God? Did you not hear what I said earlier about the brain's ability to perceive what it wants to? You were a dying man on a battlefield, surrounded by your dead comrades, and you were having an epiphany of the futility of the life you had led. Surely, you can think of another explanation for this vision, Uriah, a more likely explanation that does not require the supernatural?" Uriah responds with, "I need no other explanation. You may be wise in many things, Revelation, but you cannot know what goes on in my mind. I heard the voice of God and saw his face. He bore me up and set me into a deep slumber, and when I had awoke, my wounds were healed." And then after that, he points to the back of his head where there's a massive scar.
Mm-hmm. From where the bone was, and yeah.
Often Uriah says that's the greatest thing about faith, is that it requires no proof. The lack of proof is the very essence of faith.
Yep.
And so go ahead.
I was gonna say he is. It sounds like he's getting set up for the literal biggest disappointment of his life when he realizes who he's like talking to, and that his faith was basically placed completely in the Emperor.
Well, the constant talk after this is the discussion of war, and how for the Emperor, religion breeds adversity and therefore breeds conflict because of all the wars that have been fought in the name of religion.
He's not wrong. Ever since God has had a name, people have fought about it.
Correct. And Uriah counters with the sheer volume of good it has done, that it teaches one to be a good person, to respect thine others, and to also the strength it provides as he would talk to dying men, old men, and reaffirm their faith in God and allow them to to express their happiness in the divine before their death, and the good it has done to the people of his religion and his church. The importance of faith in either the faithless or those who need it, as sometimes the only solution for a wounded mind is belief in the divine. So as I was saying, the concept of like, oh, all the wars that were fought over it, but also all the good it's done, a wounded mind, answer is faith. And even Big E was talking about how the Crusades were fought under the name of Deus Vult. He even said the word Deus Vult, which I thought was quite funny.
Wow. What a Chad.
What a Chad. And this discussion, that kind of thing, back and forth, and the importance and non-importance. And eventually Uriah, being drunk and just going over the traumatic aspect of his life, said, fuck this. And, got fed up with it. Constant arguing and bickering. And he went to go pray in his church and bid the emperor to leave. And Big E was like, I'm not going to do that.
No.
And Uriah said, fine, do what you want, but what you say and your malicious intent does not adjust my faith in the divine. And so Big E then says very well and reveals himself. Reveals himself to Uriah as the man himself, the person he saw in his vision, and the emperor of mankind as well.
Yep.
And originally, it's very much a sad moment for our priest.
Yeah.
But it doesn't last.
Oh, well, that's good. Because I was completely thinking that Uriah was just going to break down and be like, oh, God, everything I've known and everything I prayed to is a lie. Oh, no. Oh, God. Oh, God. Grimdark. Oh, no. Oh, God. Or
in the beginning, it had a little bit of that. It was the notice that, or the notion that he himself was the face he saw. He was the face of the divine, and in reality was just the Emperor of Man, who he views as a tyrant. And when you think about what the Emperor said to him, which was, why do you deny me? Accept me and you will know that I am the only truth and the only way, makes a lot more sense in that.
Yeah.
However,
that's a moment. That's a moment right there. Jeez.
Though, as eventually the emperor told him to follow, and he walked him out of the church, and in the pouring rain of the outside stood up like 100 thunder warriors with torches in their hands, ready to put to flame the last church on earth. And in the beginning, it was obviously he was very sad, but then he reconsidered. He was thinking of all the good he had brought to both him and his parishioners. His own idea of God was false, was built on a lie, but the good he had brought from it was extremely real and very tangible.
Oh, well, that's a good little silver lining.
Yeah, like his despair he felt was actually a sense of accomplishment.
Okay.
He listened to the visitor and he had his faith challenged, but in reality, despite his faith being built on a lie, it meant nothing to the men and women who had their lives bettered from it.
Right. Just because his faith was based on what he didn't know was a lie doesn't mean that it nullifies any comfort that he had given to the dying, or anybody that had healed themselves in the holy water. He'd still done a lot of good stuff, even if his religion was based on a false god.
On Big E. Well, which is also, we'll discuss the false god thing maybe a little bit later, but it said the last time Uriah had gazed into the eyes of the emperor and looked at a being who had lived for millennia, witnessed wonders and horrors, so much knowledge, and with the amount of violence he had brought and compassion he had, how could the emperor even be remotely human? How could he understand the concepts of humanity, of humans? Of course he's not going to have believe in the divine for someone who isn't remotely human.
Yeah.
And his idea of the new world, because he was talking about like the conquering of the galaxy, right? Religion is affront or is aloof and must be brought low in order for the humanity and the emperor to truly take over the galaxy as their divine, or not divine right. Sorry, that'll be the opposite. As their right.
Yeah.
But this quote here I really like, because he was challenging him. He said, "What are you? Like what are you? You discuss all this like this conquest of the galaxy." And the Emperor, quote, says, "Nothing of such grand scale can be achieved without a singular vision at its heart, least of all the reconquest of the galaxy," when he's explaining that he must be the sole leader of it.
Yeah.
Uriah responds with, "Didn't you just tell me of the bloody slaughters perpetrated by crusaders? Doesn't that make you no different or no better than the holy men you were telling me about? The difference is I know I am right," said the Emperor. And Uriah says, "Spoken like a true autocrat. You misunderstand, Uriah. I have seen the narrow survival path that is all that stands between humanity and extinction, and this is the way it must begin." Uriah states, "It is a dangerous road you travel. To deny humanity a thing will only make them crave it all the more. And if you succeed in this grand vision of yours, what then? Beware that your subjects do not begin to see you as a god."
Oh boy. The amount
Oh
of
boy.
like the amount of holy shit he's right is palpable. Like you can almost savor how right he is.
It was even funnier because the Emperor was talking about all the horrors done in the name of religion, the creation of the Inquisition that would burn women and witches over superstition. Yep. And I was just like, fuck, man.
You have no idea,
said,
do you, Biggie?
Even said like, oh, the Inquisition, a power of unquestioning, that no one could question, and it had a complete autocracy. And I'm like, oh my god.
Oh boy, if only you knew the hypocrisy that was about to befall your Imperium. Holy shit. Oh, man.
So at the end of the book, it said, "Bereft of the need of the reassurance only faith could bring to mortal men and women, the Emperor found it wasteful and an extremely dangerous distraction." And Uriah couldn't really explain just the sheer comfort it brought to mere human beings and its importance. And so with that, as the Thunder Warriors were setting the church aflame, Uriah and his old brittle bones walked back into the flaming church at his with his little pocket clock and the altar, and just kind of sat there in solemn contemplation and prayer. And when the morning came and the church was burnt down to the ground, and the Emperor bid him and his Thunder Warriors to leave, the only sound that could be heard was the ticking of a broken clock.
Oh, that is... Yeah,
and that was it.
That's a hell of an ending.
And that was the book.
Damn.
Or the short story, I guess so.
Yeah. That's heavy.
It's very heavy, and it creates an interesting thought process of, is the Emperor any better than the religious wars that were crafted in the earlier days, considering the destruction that he wrought?
I was gonna say he's arguably worse.
From a sheer loss of life standpoint, sure. If we're rating him on the Hitler scale, he's quite high on the Hitler scale, as you remember from All Garson Party.
Yeah, he's very, very high on that scale. Despite what he wanted the Imperium to become. I do like the idea that Big E is like this larger than life figure. He's been alive for millennia, and he is like the most non-human thing ever. And that the one who is supposed to shepherd humanity forward couldn't possibly understand what it's like to be human, because he's so old and he has all this power and he has all these he couldn't possibly understand what it's like to be the people that he's leading.
A man who has seen
love that
everything.
idea.
A man who has seen everything, done everything, and has no fear of death.
Yeah. He is the most least human thing ever, and he's trying to lead humans without any concept of like how they feel.
And one also has to argue, because we talked about the idea that Uriah's religion was born on a false god. This is the biggest and one of the most interesting topics, I think, when it comes to discussing the Emperor. Who's to say he isn't a god?
Well,
Like
he's
who? The chaos gods, are they not?
They are.
The Emperor can create miracles in his own right, like the other gods. Look at Celestine. He possessed Guilliman to fight Mortarion. The sisters strengthen their power and faith is literally a direct result from Big E.
Also true. I have heard the argument that Big E is sort of the faith god, right? What is it, like the faith chaos god or something? Or
a man who we have no idea where he came from. A man whose divine light is so powerful, and his mental like psychic stuff is so strong that some people could not even look at him. Who's to say that to Uriah, the Emperor was not a god, and in fact, as a god, was attempting to test his faith?
Well, I mean, that's yeah. That I hadn't thought of it like that, but sure. I mean,
The problem is the Big E has done so many dumb fucking things in the lore.
Yeah, he sure has.
Magnus example, bad dad.
Bad dad. Magnus had his fair of follies in that whole thing, but Biggie could have very easily prevented it too.
And also, I mean, if we look at actual Bible
Perturabo.
And Angron. But if we look in the actual like Bible and stuff, God is not always the nicest of people.
Oh yeah, Old Testament God is a vengeful God indeed. New Testament God, pretty all right. Old Testament God, fire and brimstone. Oh boy, let's just flood it all and start over. And it's like, okay, all right, sure.
That's the part that I thought of. Oh yeah, that's right. Shai reminded us. Remember when he burned Lorgar's favorite city and forced him to kneel in his ashes and told him he was a big pussy?
Well, yeah, fair enough. Big E is. Yeah, he's not exactly a merciful faith god, is he?
It's I like the book a lot. It's very respectful. I think it's obviously leaning towards the atheism part of it, but it's showing the sheer importance of faith to those who need it, despite whether or not their faith was correctly placed. And it also calls into question the motives of the unfaithful. The Emperor's Crusade is not particularly that wonderful for humanity. Well, I mean, it is and isn't. It's quite violent.
Yeah.
And also at the same time, you know what I would have, well, maybe not. I kind of, for a second when I was reading this, I thought this Uriah might have been Malcador, but like maybe like reforged or something.
Oh. Okay.
But no, he's not. But it would have been an interesting concept. But as an unreligious person, it's a great insight into the Emperor and a bit of his mindset / hypocrisy.
Oh, yes. I mean, if you know how the Imperium ends up, like, it sounds like the Emperor is just dripping with hypocrisy. Because most people that are going to read this short story will know how the Imperium ends up, how they end up worshiping Big E as a god, as the religious figure. And man, it must just seem like the most... He must seem like the most hypocritical thing on the... Like, the hypocrisy is just oozing from his ears and his eyes, and it's just... yeah. Everything he's damning the priest for ends up happening to the Imperium.
Right. Just with a different banner and a different flag.
And a different...
methodology, exactly. Basically. Though, and you know, like I mentioned, we talked last episode about the Harlequins and Kegorok, the laughing god. You believe Kegorok to be pretty real. He's a god. If Big E and Kegorok duked it out, do you think Big E would have won in his heyday?
I couldn't tell you because I don't know a whole lot about Kegarak and what else he do, but I imagine it would have been a slugfest. I don't think it would have been like a one-sided affair. I mean, yeah, Big E seemed like he could tango with a Chaos God. Yeah,
the definition of God is very much up for debate in the term and the world of 40k. If we easily define the Chaos Gods as gods, and then there are the Eldar gods, like Isha, who is in Nurgle's Jar, to remind you. Cain,
you always gotta remind me of that.
Always gotta remind you that. There's Vol, tons of gods there. You know, the concept of the Emperor being a god is certainly up for debate, especially considering a complete lack of understanding of his backstory.
Yeah, it is not far-fetched to believe that the Emperor could be some sort of god of humanity. That is not far-fetched at all, I don't think.
And it's also not far-fetched that someone like Uriah Olathair could see him instead as a test of faith. If his god is saying that God is not real, then that is a test of his true faith in the divine.
Yeah, certainly. Whew.
Great fucking book. Great fucking book.
This got very deep.
It did, and that's why I liked it so much.
Yeah.
And then last episode we talked about Clussy. You know, like duality of man.
the duality of man. Clussy and the existence of the almighty, the divine, the hypocrisy of telling someone they aren't this, and Clussy. Damn, we have it all, ladies and gentlemen.
We literally advertised a Tyrannid with giant tits on this episode.
We did. And that might have a giant penis, too.
We
advertised that in this episode.
Shy, I expect this one drawn with a dick now.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Oh,
it's biomass. They can evolve to suit their needs, right?
Shy says you can build religion on big titty bugs. Shy, they already did. The Gene Stealer cults. Praise to the four-armed emperor. You already got it. There is a religion on them already. And shit, man, who's to say that the hive mind isn't a fucking god?
Oh, that's also true. Yeah, sure, why not? Do you
Wait
think
a
we're
minute.
gonna get
There's
anything on the hive mind? Or?
Wait a minute. There's the Catan. They are literally star gods.
Oh yeah, they are perceived. That's true. They're literal star gods, aren't they? And
yeah.
They get killed.
Yeah.
And put into pokeballs.
Man, Zarek the Silent King is a god killer. He's the real atheist around here.
Yes, he is.
Holy
yes,
shit.
He is.
Wait, yo, Big E is a fucking bitch. He keeps trying to dissolve religion. He tries to dissolve religion and instead becomes a religious martyr. Zarek actually killed the gods. And what a Chad. Yeah. Necron supremacy. Let's go.
Necron supremacy. Let's fucking go. That being said, one of these days I do want a Void Dragon mini. That thing looks so fucking dope, dude.
It is really dope. The Virgin Emperor of Mankind versus the Chad Zarek.
Zarek wins every time.
I need that as the meme. I have drawn you as the Soy Jack Emperor. You have lost. Hail to the infinite empire.
Gee, I wonder what we're gonna get added at a lot on Twitter on Wednesday or today or whatever. I wonder if it's gonna be a thing. I
really enjoyed this episode, DK.
Yeah, this is a fun this episode had everything.
It was very enjoyable. It was very interesting.
Yeah.
And to all of our fans out there, you know, you are obviously completely accepted to believe your beliefs. We have nothing against what you believe, so long as you aren't hurting anybody.
Yep.
And
as long as you aren't extremist scum.
Yes, this is not a condemnation of anything naturally, but it was a very interesting world because this is the universe and the insight, I think, is very interesting. Oh yeah,
definitely. Nice little insight into how Biggie thinks and just how bad it gets after Biggie dies. Air quotes, dies.
I should mention though that Biggie is portrayed as a very compassionate, or mostly compassionate, intelligent man in this book. He's very calm and collected and respectful mostly.
It's not he's lashing out at Uriah and telling him he's a fool and.
Yeah, he's very calm about it. Okay. Smug sense of superiority, sure, but you know. Anyway,
you're a god.
Yeah, well, yeah. Anyway, that's the last church. DK, knock it out in an afternoon, man. It's so good. It's incredible.
I will read it.
Good.
Yeah. It sounds incredible. So yeah, definitely.
Hour and a half. Paint some minis during it. To the rest of our fans. Oh yeah, thanks, Graham McNeil. You wrote this, and then you wrote the Demon Kulaba. And then you helped with Arcane. Probably you've got some fucking range.
I hear the rest of the Ultramarine books are quite good though, aside from Demon Kulaba and Nightmare Fuel.
Oh, probably same reason why people like the Ultramarines and I like the fucking Night Lords. Good books.
Yeah, sure.
Anywho, a big thank you to everyone for watching this episode. I really like this one. This honestly might be one of my favorites we've done, just because of the conversation.
Yeah, it's a deep conversation, and I liked it. It was great. Good for us, and good for you for being here, listeners.
Now we need to end this episode something dumb, because there's no way we can get around it. Have you seen Biken's tits, dude?
Oh man, I've never wanted to play Guilty Gear more than I do right now.
Fuck yeah. Episode over. Let's play some Guilty Gear.
If only I remember the lyrics to the Guilty Gear. Is my limits blazing? If the word kills.